Today's lesson is Fancy a game of checkers or chess? Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
Hello, I'm Kiki.
And today we're going to continue talking about checkers and chess. Again, these are popular board games in the U.S. and other countries as well. And if you're looking for some kind of diversion from your phone, or if you're stuck home on a rainy day, you might consider getting out the chessboard and having a game of checkers or chess. And last time we did talk about checkers, which is a rather simple game, isn't it?
That's right. Checkers is a game that's mostly played by young children or people that don't really feel like using a lot of concentration and they just want to play an easy game of checkers. Now, checkers is more simple because both players have 12 identical pieces, but we learned that one of the pieces, if you get to the other side or to the last row, of course, diagonally, you can only move diagonally, that piece can actually become a king.
Exactly. So it's a pretty simple game and the rules are pretty simple to pick up, and I suspect most people here in Taiwan would find it not particularly challenging, but again, it is a way to simply pass the time. And in today's program, we're going to talk about chess, which requires intense concentration. And of course, chess may be more challenging for some of you. So let's talk about chess in today's program. Let's listen to the first part, and then we'll come back to talk about it.
While checkers employs identical pieces, chess involves 6 types of pieces: pawns, knights, bishops, rooks, queens, and kings, which collectively provide 16 pieces per player. Each type of piece has its own rules for moving around the board. For example, a bishop can move across any number of squares in one turn, but only diagonally, while rooks can move only horizontally or vertically. The king, being the most important piece, can move in any direction, but only one square at a time.
大家好，第一部分我们来介绍动词 involve， 它的意思是包含、需要，也可以是涉及或是牵涉的意思。例如 Helen's new job involves taking care of customers' complaints and requests. Helen 的新工作内容包括处理客户的投诉和要求。又或者说 We didn't involve Alice in our plans because we knew she wouldn't want to help. 我们没有让 Alice 涉入我们的计划，因为我们知道她不会想帮忙的。接下来是副词 collectively， 表示共同的、全体的或是集体的。例如 If we work collectively on the task, we will complete it much sooner. 如果我们共同努力完成这项任务，我们将会更快完成它。或者 Instead of each department operating independently, I think we should start making all important decisions collectively. 我认为我们应该开始一起做所有的重要决策，而非每个部门独自运作。下一个看到 horizontally， 这个副词的意思是水平的，可以说 The painting was hung horizontally on the living room wall. 这幅画被水平的挂在客厅墙上。又或者说 The cockroach crawled horizontally across the wall. 蟑螂横向的爬过墙壁。
Let's talk about part 1. While checkers employs identical pieces, chess involves 6 types of pieces: pawns, knights, bishops, rooks, queens, and kings, which collectively provide 16 pieces per player. So we know that in chess, there are 6 different types of pieces or different shaped pieces that you play with. And all together, collectively, they add up to 16 pieces per player. Whereas in checkers, each player only has 12.
Exactly. So these are specific pieces here, and we've got different kinds of pieces. The game involves these 6 types of pieces. It involves them. It includes them. You have to use these different kinds of pieces. A pawn is the smallest one. A knight looks like a horse. The bishop is kind of pointy. A rook, it looks kind of like a castle. The queen is the second largest piece. And of course, the king is the largest piece. It usually has a cross on top of it. And, of course, you have 16 pieces per player. Let's see, you've got 8 pawns, 2 rooks, 2 knights, 2 bishops, 1 queen, and 1 king.
And collectively, they provide 16 pieces per player. So collectively means as a group or as a whole. So all together, with all these pieces added up, each player will have 16 pieces. Each type of piece has its own rules for moving around the board. So we know that there are 6 types of pieces or 6 different, let's say, characters, okay? So these different pieces, they will move around the board differently. So for example, a bishop can move across any number of squares in one turn, but only diagonally, while rooks can move only horizontally or vertically.
Now, remember last time we talked about diagonal or diagonally, which means moving at a 45-degree angle. So that's how you move your pieces in checkers. But in chess, the bishop can move diagonally any number of spaces. You can move just 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, as many as you want. And, of course, it can only move diagonally, while rooks can move only horizontally or vertically. So if you talk about something being horizontal, that means having to do with the horizon, which is the line between the sky and the earth, which is left and right. It's a line that goes from the left to the right, and it's, of course, horizontal. A line that goes up and down is vertical. So you can move your pieces vertically if you have a rook or the queen. We'll get to that later. But again, the bishop can move diagonally and the rook can move horizontally or vertically, up and down or left and right.
The king, being the most important piece, can move in any direction, but only 1 square at a time. So unlike the other pieces, some pieces can move across the whole board in a particular type of direction, so either diagonally, horizontally, or vertically. The king, being the most important, and it's supposed to be the most powerful, the king can move in any direction, but it can only move 1 square at a time.
Right. Unlike the queen, which can move as many spaces as you want to. And again, the king is the most important piece, and that's the piece you want to capture in order to win the game. We did not mention the knight, which is kind of complicated. The knight moves in a special way. You move it 2 spaces forward and 1 to the right or 1 to the left. Some people describe it as moving 1 space forward and then 1 space diagonally to the right or to the left. And of course, if there are pieces in the way, it's okay, you can jump over them, but it needs to land in an unoccupied space. So now we've described the characteristics of each of the pieces. Let's move on now to talk about the goal of chess and how you can develop a strategy. Let's listen to the second part right now.
The goal of chess is to put your opponent's king under threat of capture. When this occurs, the king is said to be in check. The opponent must then move the king out of check to avoid losing the game. If they fail, then it's checkmate. The game ends and you win.
The goal of chess is to put your opponent's king under threat of capture. So the whole point of the game, or what you're trying to do to win the game, is that you want to capture or put your opponent's king under the threat of capture. So you have to move all your pieces to the point where your opponent's king has nowhere to go, and your pieces are able to trap the king and basically kill your opponent's king.
Exactly. So the goal is to actually put your opponent's king under the threat of capture. Of course, the goal is to capture the king, but you never actually do that. You just get the king in a position where it can't move anywhere, and then the game is over. It's checkmate. And again, when this occurs, though, when your opponent's king is under threat of capture, but it has a way to escape, when this occurs, the king is said to be in check. And usually, if you put your opponent's king in check, you're supposed to say so. If you move your bishop to a position where it could actually jump your king or your opponent's king, then you say check, so your opponent knows that they're in trouble and that they need to move their king as fast as possible.
Now, when your opponent hears that they have been put in check, The opponent must then move the king out of check to avoid losing the game. So if your opponent, they've been put in this position where they are now in check, if they want to continue playing, if they don't want to lose, they have to move their king out of the way. So they have to figure out which square they can now move their king to get their king out of danger.
Right, and of course, you could actually move it out of the way, but you don't want to move into a space that could be jumped by another piece. And of course, if you have nowhere to go, if they're covered by other pieces, well then it's checkmate. You have lost the game. And I think we also didn't mention the fact that chess pieces are usually black and white goes first, unlike weiqi, where black goes first.
That's right. So if you are able to capture your opponent's king or put it into a threat of capture and they can't move out of the way, then it's checkmate and you win the game. Okay, so that's the end of part 2. Let's listen to part 3.
Since there are so many ways to move chess pieces around the board, chess is considered a highly sophisticated game of strategy. There are even grandmasters who participate in chess tournaments and study intensively to devise winning strategies. Therefore, it's fair to say that if you prefer a game that's absorbing and challenging, then chess might be for you.
第三部分我们看到形容词 sophisticated 指的是复杂的、精密的，或是精明老练的，也可以是见多识广的意思。举例来说 The boat is steered by a sophisticated navigation system. 那艘船是由一个精密复杂的导航系统操控的。再举一个例子 The drone's sophisticated camera allows it to take photographs from high altitudes. 无人机精密的摄影机让它能从高空中拍照。下一个我们看到单字 devise 这个动词有巧妙设计或是发明、策划、想出的意思。例如 They devised a machine that can recognize voices. 他们设计出一台可以辨识人声的机器。或是 After 5 hours in the meeting room, the marketing team finally devised a new strategy. 经过5个小时在会议室的讨论，该行销团队终于设计出一项新策略。接着看到片语 It's fair to say 加 that 子句，它的意思是可以这么说，或是说点点点是恰当的、合理的。例如 It's fair to say that every child loves to eat candy. 可以说每个孩子都喜欢吃糖果。或者 It's fair to say that nobody wants to carry out this task. It is too difficult to do. 没有人愿意执行这项任务，很合理，因为它实在是太难做了。最后介绍单字 absorbing， 它是形容词，表示引人入胜的，非常有趣的。比如说 The content of this novel is absorbing and inspiring. 这本小说的内容引人入胜且激励人心。又或者说 Millions of people watched the absorbing basketball match. 数百万人看了这场吸引人的篮球比赛。
Okay, let's talk about part 3 here, and it says, since there are so many ways to move chess pieces around the board, or because there are so many ways to move your pieces, chess is considered a highly sophisticated game of strategy. Strategy, again, refers to needing to have a plan. Of course, if you're one country trying to invade another country, you need to have a strategy, you need to have a plan, and you need to plan ahead. You need to anticipate what your enemy might do, and that does happen in chess. You need to have a lot of strategy, and we're describing this game as being very sophisticated.
So the word sophisticated means to have a lot of worldly experiences or to have knowledge of fashion and culture. So usually if we're describing somebody, you can describe them as being sophisticated and you'll think of somebody that is maybe rich or of high society because you assume that they have lots of knowledge about lots of different things. And the game of chess, it's also considered to be a sophisticated game. So when you're talking about a game being sophisticated, you're also talking about this game having a lot more complexity and some different layers to it. And at one point, chess was considered to be a game for the noblemen, for royalty. You know, you have to be more educated because there's so much strategy in it. So in the olden days or in medieval times, they might think, oh, the common peasant or farm workers, they might not have time to learn how to play chess. So nowadays, we try to teach a lot of young people or give them opportunity to play chess because they can work on their mind and learn how to think up of different types of strategies so they can use their brain.
Right. So again, sophisticated means it's highly developed. It has a lot of complexity. For example, I could say Taiwan has a sophisticated transportation network. There are many different ways to get around. There are lots of highways and railways and things like that. It's pretty easy to get from point A to point B because of the highly sophisticated transportation system. And again, if you're playing chess, you need to have a highly sophisticated strategy in order to win the game. Unless your opponent is not particularly intelligent, then you can probably win pretty easily without a strategy. There are even grand masters who participate in chess tournaments and study intensively to devise winning strategies. So yes, indeed, we have grand masters. Those are people who have played chess for many, many years. They have lots of experience and they anticipate the moves of their opponents pretty easily. And so they are masters or grand masters, and they participate in chess tournaments.
So a tournament is a series of contests or competitions between a number of competitors competing for an overall prize. So sometimes tournaments can take days. We know there are tennis tournaments, chess tournaments, golf tournaments, which involves these players having to play a number of different games and slowly moving upwards and competing with different opponents. And at the end, there will only be one winner. So usually a tournament, sometimes it could take a day, sometimes it can take a couple of days, but basically it involves the competitor to play a series of games against many different opponents.
And again, they study the game intensively. If something's done intensively, of course, you concentrate on it for a long period of time. And intensive is the adjective. You might take an intensive course of English if you're going to immigrate to Canada, for example. And of course, here you could also study intensively if you want to learn English fluently. And if you want to be a good chess player, well, you can study it intensively because you want to devise winning strategies. So if you devise something, you come up with a plan, okay? So if you work for a company that wants to sell products, you need to devise a strategy to do some marketing and figure out how to sell your products.
And usually when you're devising a plan, it's really a plan that you have put a lot of careful thought into. So you've really thought a lot about it and you really planned it carefully. So devising a winning strategy, you're really thinking carefully, maybe a couple steps ahead on how to move your pieces so that you can win the chess game. Therefore, it's fair to say that if you prefer a game that is absorbing and challenging, then chess might be for you. So, if you would like to play a game that is a bit harder and absorbing here means very interesting, fascinating, or exciting. Because in chess, we've learned that there are lots of strategies and your opponent might have a different strategy from you. So sometimes you can anticipate what they might do, but there are times where you might be surprised as well. So it's very exciting because there are a lot of changes that might happen in a chess game.
Right, and here, of course, we have the phrase, it's fair to say, which means you could say this. It's pretty obvious. It's fair to say that if you move to the big city, you'll easily find a job. And it's fair to say that if you prefer a game that has a lot of strategy and if it's absorbing and challenging, then chess might be the game for you. And maybe you might think chess isn't challenging enough, so therefore you probably would prefer to play a game of weiqi, or Go, as we call it in English from the Japanese. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Here comes Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第3部分写到，由于棋盘上移动西洋棋的方法有很多种，因此西洋棋被认为是一种高度复杂的策略游戏。那文中是用 since 来表达由于。那我们来整理一下 since 的不同词性用法。好，第一个呢， since 可以当连接词来引导原因子句，去表达说因为怎么样，由于怎么样，或是既然怎么样，就像课文的用法。那第二个，我们可以把 since 拿来当副词用，表达说此后从此。像 They moved to 花莲 5 years ago and have lived there since。 他们5年前搬到花莲，从此就住在那里。那么第三个，我们可以把 since 拿来当介系词或连接词，去表达自从点点点以来。那么之后是接表示过去时间的名词或子句。在这个用法当中呢，主要子句常常会搭配完成式或是完成进行式。我们来看2个例句。We've been here since 7 a.m. 我们从早上7点就一直在这里了。那句子里面的 since 是介系词，而主要子句的动词时态是用到现在完成式。再看到 Tina has been doing her homework since she got home from school. Tina 从放学回家就一直在写功课。那么句子里面的 since 是连接词，而主要子句这边的动词时态我们是用现在完成进行式来表达。好，那么课文最后一句它有写到，如果你喜欢引人入胜而且具有挑战性的游戏，那么西洋棋可能适合你。文中是用 absorbing 来形容引人入胜的，非常有趣的。它的动词是 absorb。 我们来补充它的字首字根。先看到 ab 这个字首啊，很常见，它有 from、away 或是 off 的意思，表达从啊，或者是离开，或者是分离。我们看到在 absorb 这个字当中，它的字首 ab 表示 from， 也就是从。那么字根 sorb 这个部分表示 suck in， 吸入吸进来。那这样子应该很容易联想到 absorb 就是表达吸收，尤其是指逐渐吸收。它还有那种理解、掌握，像掌握知识啊、讯息等等那种意思。好，那我们也补充2个有相同字首的单字。第一个是 aboriginal， 它的字首 ab 表示从，那么 original 它是形容原本的、最初的。我们可以用来自原生地去联想到土生土长的语义，所以 aboriginal 就可以用来形容是原住民的、土生土长的。第二个补充的是 abnormal， 它的字首 ab 表示偏离， normal 是正常的。那合在一起 abnormal 就是表达不正常的、反常的。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Involve. The school debate team involves students from every grade level. Collectively. The researchers collectively analyze the data to draw significant conclusions. Horizontally. Holly adjusted the camera lens both horizontally and vertically to capture the wonderful view. Sophisticated. As an engineer, Jeff could see that the problem would require a highly sophisticated solution. Tournament. The basketball team has been practicing a lot for the upcoming tournament. Intensively. Needing a good score to pass the class, Sally studied intensively for the final exam. Devise. Professor Gardner is seeking to devise more efficient ways to store energy.
Discussion Starter starts now!
It's time now for our discussion starter, and the question is, which game do you prefer to play, checkers or chess, and why? Or if you've never played either, which would you rather try?
I generally enjoy playing chess more because there are so many different pieces that you have to move differently throughout the board. But sometimes I do get frustrated with myself when I get stuck or if my opponent is a lot better than me. So I have to practice more.
I need to practice more as well. I would rather not play chess because I don't want to look stupid because I always lose. I always forget that I left my queen in a vulnerable position or something like that. So I would rather play, well, I don't know if I would rather play checkers either. I think I would like to compromise and play a game called backgammon, which we haven't talked about today, but that involves pieces similar to checker pieces, and you use dice and move the pieces around. It involves a little bit of skill, but mostly it involves luck.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Kiki.
I am Roger.
See you next time.